Keith, it's really good to chat with you.
I'm extremely happy, full of joy, so relieved that my friends and all of the 28 hostages are back with their families. It's amazing, truly amazing. I was so worried about them. Knowing what they were, I mean, the conditions that they were in and the threatening situation that they were in, and just, yeah, a huge relief to have them back alive.
You were in captivity for 484 days, and then you were released, and it took no time at all for you to completely pivot to campaigning to get these hostages released. So a lot of, the work that you have put in has paid off. Can you walk me back to when you were released and give us a sense of what it feels like? What these hostages have just gone through this week. You've been there. What does that feel like?
Yes, so as you said, I was released after 484 days in captivity. Um, my friends and all of the 28 hostages that were released on Monday um, were released after over 2 years in captivity. I believe it's 738 days. So I can only tell you what my experience was, but um, I was feeling incredibly grateful and thankful and um, this miraculous being back with my family, something that I wasn't sure would ever happen or didn't know how long it would take till it happened. So just being amazed to be alive, reunited with my family, being amazed by so many things that that I took for granted before. I was kidnapped by a Hamas terrorist on the 7th of October. Um, just so many things. I mean, the list goes on and on and on of starting with just being free, just, having my freedom back again and not being locked up in tunnels and in schools and in houses and being under threat, um, and feeling that any day could be my last day alive. And there were situations where that was very um, a possibility. I mean, a very clear possibility. Terrorists threatened to kill me, pointing guns at me and saying they're going to kill me, and just the violence that I experienced and others that I witnessed that they experienced, and living in a war, living under constant threat. Knowing that hostages had been murdered in captivity, knowing that hostages had been killed, and knowing that there were the possibility was there that that could happen to me. Um,
You
but
spent so much time in dark tunnels, not getting to eat proper food. When you were released, how was that acclimating back into light? I mean, daylight, bright lights, food that's beyond what you were eating for 484 days.
I find it very difficult to explain, to find the words to describe um, both what it was like in captivity and what it was like being released from captivity. But I can tell you that I am still to this day, and we are like 8.5 months after I was released on the 1st of February, 2025. I'm still amazed by so many things, just by seeing the sky, seeing green trees, nature. Um, I mean, first and foremost, being able to be with my family and knowing that they are okay, and that, just the relief that they know that I am okay. I mean, that was really distressing in captivity, thinking how much my family is suffering and how much I I promised myself. I said that I must survive to come back to my family to bring an end to their suffering. So that happened, the end of their suffering by the
Yeah,
fact that I was released alive. And
a powerful
so,
motivation. Can you give me a sense of those initial days of your release when you were trying to acclimate? Can you help paint a picture of what that was like, your body physically trying to acclimate, not just your mind?
yes. It seems like such a long time ago. I mean, it's 8.5 months, but it seems so, so far away. And trying to remember what those days were like is very challenging. I'm trying to do that. And um, I think just, um, I don't know. I mean, the relief of being safe, and not being in immediate danger was something that was incredible. Um, Being surrounded by my family with their love and my friends, and experiencing um, being in this environment where everybody is just doing everything possible to make sure that I'm okay. And I was trying very hard to convey from the very beginning when I was released that I'm okay, um, both physically and mentally. We flew in a helicopter from the base that I was taken to out of Gaza, and then we flew my wife Aviva and my son Shai and I to the hospital. And the thoughts that were in my mind when before I met my wife and my son was just to make sure as much as I can that they see that I'm okay. Um, Again, both physically and mentally. So, and also making sure, trying to, 484 days, not one day or one minute of that time, I felt clean. And I went for weeks without having an opportunity to, I call it put water on my body, because it's not a shower. I mean, even when I had opportunities to put water on my body to quote unquote clean my body, it was never I never felt clean because I didn't the conditions there were not it wasn't possible to properly clean my body. So actually, at this army base, before I met my wife and my son, I literally scrubbed my body 3 times with this, like, it's not a scouring pad, but it's a plastic thing that you scrub your body with. I'm not sure what it's called in English, but I did that 3 times. And when I was in there, the doctor came into the room, I think 3 times, just to ask if I was okay. And knowing that my wife and my son were waiting for me, and I was waiting to, I mean, I was just wanting to see them as soon as possible, and knowing that they wanted to see me as soon as possible. But I wanted to make sure my body was clean before that meeting. So that's a memory that just popped up into my mind. Um, and then yes, trying to be, trying to joke with them, and laughing with them, just trying to, again, make it clear to them as soon as possible that I'm okay. And
I understand that
so,
the hospital where the hostages, released hostages, are taken to have to provide special sheets because the skin is so sensitive after all of that time spent in the tunnels. Did you have that same experience?
um, most of my time in captivity, I was actually above ground. Um, Nonetheless, hardly ever saw natural light because the places I was held in, um, either I was moved around 33 times throughout my time in captivity, relocated, and I spent, the conditions that I experienced varied. I was in tunnels. I was in a school with Palestinian civilians like all around, and I was only allowed to go to the toilet in the dark, so that meant before sunrise and after sunset. And so I experienced, but what was dominant throughout my time in captivity was being held in darkness. So even though I wasn't in a tunnel for most of the time, I was in dark rooms, and some of it, and I was 6 months. I was a total of 6 months alone, by myself, either locked up by myself in a room for some of the time, or living with terrorists for some of the time. But so the total of 6 months, I was alone. Had nobody to share, what I felt or what I was going through. When I was with the terrorists, I was just trying to be friendly to them, and I was making an effort to be nice to them. And that's what I did, just hoping that they wouldn't be violent or agitated or just. So, anyway, but what I said is the dominant was the darkness and obviously the uncertainty whether, when, or even if I would ever make it back to my family. So, um,
When I spoke with your wife, Aviva, she relayed a story about when you were both separated, when you were both taken into captivity. She was released after a couple of months, and you were separated. And I wonder how that felt for you, being separated from your wife while you are being held back in captivity for an, at the time, unknown period.
yes, when they told us they were taking Aviva, and that she would be released the next day, they told us that I would be released the day after Aviva. So, hoping that this was true and trying to believe that this was true. And, you know, they had lied to us many times before that, so we didn't really know whether it was true or not. But hoping that would be the case, we were separating for a day or two, and I was very, very relieved that Aviva was going to be released, hoping that this was actually the case. And so it was this huge sense of relief that Aviva is being taken out of this horrific situation. And I mean, the violence that we experienced and the abuse that we experienced, and I mean, I can go on and on about that, and what we saw others going through, just severe, severe violence and abuse of many different kinds. So I was really relieved when Aviva was released, and I saw her being released on television. Well, I saw her being taken out of the Hamas car into the Red Cross car, and then I also saw a huge crowd of very violent, hostile people that were screaming and banging on the car, and I actually, there was a close-up of Aviva's face that I saw on television. And I saw that many, many times throughout captivity because they showed it over and over again. Um, I could see the fear in her face and how scared she was, and I was as well. And I never knew if Aviva had made it back because I only saw her getting into the Red Cross car and taking off. There was no coverage of the hostages arriving in Israel. So I stayed, and I stayed with a woman um, that we had been with for almost a month before, well, a month before, all through that. And I was just really, really worried because they had told Aviva and I throughout from the very beginning, because in their words, because we're old people, we will be the first hostages to be released. Um, and I was just so, so worried that I would be released and this woman would stay behind by herself with these three terrorists that were holding us in captivity. So 5 days after Aviva was released, this other woman was released. And that again was this huge relief that I wasn't leaving this woman, um, and getting released, going back home. And this woman went through. I actually witnessed her being beaten and being um, literally tortured. I mean, they brought me into a room and I saw this woman. They had taken this woman and then they told me to come into the room. They took me into the room and they had tied her hands and her feet together and they had covered her mouth with tape. And I come into the room and I saw this woman lying on her back on the floor. And as I said, you know, what they had done to her. And there were three terrorists in this room, and two of them were taking turns beating this woman with a rod. And the third one, as I came into the room, he was standing in the corner of the room. But after I came into the room, he walked behind this woman, and he was holding a metal rod with a sharp point at the end of it, and he was poking this woman's forehead with the rod. He was like holding the rod and applying pressure, like pushing down on this woman's forehead. And I saw other, you know, acts of abuse and violence, and I think I mentioned they threatened to kill me. They pointed weapons at me, and so just again, I was so grateful and thankful that I wasn't in a situation where I had to leave this woman there and be released. And and that's what I felt like. And then I mean she was released and the next day the ceasefire ended. And when the ceasefire ended and the war resumed, the bombing resumed, the terrorists became even more um, volatile, agitated, violent, and that's what I mentioned before, being kicked and spat on by terrorists. And then anyway, I was just trying and being grateful for the fact that I'm alive and my body is in one piece, and hoping that being nice to these terrorists would calm them and they wouldn't be violent, mean, cruel to me, which they had been previously. And but I was held, you know, I mentioned briefly, but again, just being totally disconnected from my family and knowing that they have no idea what's happening to me. They don't know if I'm alive. That was just so stressful for me to think about them. I was constantly trying to send messages to them, you know. I would close my eyes and I would picture their face in my imagination, and I would wait till they had a clear picture, and I would tell them that I'm okay. I'm okay. I'm alive, and I hope we'll see each other soon, and I hope you're doing okay. And one by one, I would start with my mother. I would always start with my mother. And my mom died 2 months before I was released.
You lived in Durham, is that right?
Chapel Hill,
Oh,
Durham. Yes, I grew up in Chapel Hill,
yeah.
and
I'm sorry about the loss of your mother.
yes, thank you. So I would start with my mom, and then I would move to Aviva and my four children, and separately I would just desperately try to send these messages to them, hoping that they would receive them. Um, which some people believe is possible. And I was hoping that this would work. And um, and that's what I did every day, and that gave me a lot of strength. And again, what I said before, promising I must survive to get back to my family, to bring an end to their suffering, and practicing gratitude a lot. And mm,
I'm sure that's what drove many of the other hostages who were just released this week as well, motivating them to see through it and to get released and to get home to their families. Now that we've entered this next phase, now that the hostages have been released, where do things go from here for you?
um, you know, this horrific situation is not over. As long as there's still hostages and there are still deceased hostages being held by Hamas terrorists in Gaza, until all of them are home, we are still in a tragic situation. The deceased hostages must be returned. Hamas agreed to this agreement, this deal agreement to release all of the hostages. And they need to do that. And the deceased families need to have their loved ones back so they can be buried properly and they can grieve properly. So, um, alongside of the joy, the immense joy of having all of the alive hostages back, we still need to continue. And my plan is to continue to do whatever I can do, and I hope I can help in some way to do that, to bring all of the remaining hostages back home.
And while there is still the fight to get all the remaining hostages back home and just the overall campaign for everyone's safety, of course, there's the displacement of tens of thousands of people and the killing of tens of thousands of people in Gaza, the Palestinians. Your Aviva told me when I interviewed her that her heart really went out to all of the families that were broken in Gaza as well, the Palestinians. Where do you sit with all of that?
Um, I just want to, before that, mention the hostages that have been released. Um, their their road to recovery and their rehabilitation, and it's going to
Yeah.
take time, and it's very challenging. And I wish all of them a speedy. I call it a recovery because I think that's what it really is. I believe every
Absolutely.
hostage that came back um, has suffered injuries of one kind or another. So I wish them all a speedy and full recovery. And my heart goes out to any innocent human being in the world, including in Gaza, that has been harmed in any way by all of this situation. I I think Hamas has caused suffering amongst um, its own people. Um, and I believe that we can bring the suffering to an end if whoever will whoever will rule Gaza decides that they want to live in peace with Israel and everybody else. Um, not only Jews, not only Israelis were kidnapped on October the 7th. Muslims were kidnapped, Buddhists were kidnapped, Christians were kidnapped, not only kidnapped, but murdered and abused by Hamas. So I really hope and I pray for a day when we will live in peace with all of our neighbors. And I think every innocent, decent, moral, humane person deserves that. And I am, again, just hoping and praying that that will happen and that it will happen soon.
Keith, my last question for you before I let you go. Do you have any message for the people of North Carolina where you grew up?
Yes, I was amazed to be released and to come to know the enormous support of so many people all over the world. And all of you who have been active and in many ways, whatever, in supporting my release and the other hostages' release and being active in bringing peace. I would like to take this opportunity to thank you and um, just hope and pray for peace for all of you, peace and security and good health for you and all people everywhere in the world. Um,
Thank you. Well said.
well, thank you.
Well, uh, you have worked tirelessly since your release, so thank you for all of that. And I hope that you get to connect with your friends who you have made in the most horrible way in captivity. I hope that you get to connect with them soon. And once again, thank you for taking the time to speak with us.
Thank you very much for having me.